Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Israel airstrike killed their leader in Beirut, a pivotal figure who led the group for over 30 years. The strike also killed senior Hezbollah commander Ali Karaki and Iranian Brigadier General Abbas Nilforshan of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. This marks the culmination of Israel's intense 2-week campaign targeting Hezbollah and is even seen a major blow to both the group and its backer, Iran. Israel's ministry warned civilians to evacuate before launching the airstrike, which flattened part of Beirut's southern suburbs. Nasrallah's death is a strategic setback for Hezbollah, Iran, and their allied militias, with President Biden calling it a measure of justice for his many victims, including thousands of Americans, Israelis, and Lebanese. Nasrallah was overseeing Hezbollah's growth into a powerful militia and its integration into Lebanon's political system. What is your thoughts on this story here, Vivek?
This is a big deal, for sure. And, I think that for all of the criticisms of, killing civilians in Gaza or whatever, I think that this is an example of doing what you want to do if you want to actually defeat your enemies, go after in a targeted way after the leadership. So I think this is a big deal. I think that a lot of people were skeptical that Bibi was going to be able to, and the IDF was able to pull this off. They did. And, I think that it also is a good example of the fact that Israel's able to get this job done, right? People say, is Israel able to get the job done, or do people actually need other countries to get involved in this conflict? I think that this is a good example of Israel looking at the leadership of their opposition, able to get that job done. And so I think this was definitely a big milestone in the war.
Tom.
I think it's huge, and I think what it shows is that everybody who doubted Israel's ability to take care of herself needs to kind of take a step back. This is Israeli military, Israeli intelligence, and them tracking where they were from the pagers and the radios, that they disrupted their communication because they weren't using smartphones, because smartphones are hyper-targeted. So they went back to old school stuff. They infiltrated a supply line, got stuff into their hands, caused those to detonate it, and then had incredible intelligence on here to make a precision strike. And I've seen, I want to see everything calm down, and I want to see, the people that are over there, the citizens that are, so horribly affected, be able to, live at peace. But I'll tell you, over the last 2 weeks, I've seen nothing but what I think is strategic wins for Israel, the way they're handling this and the way they're going after this. I mean, what is more targeted than the pager in the pocket of your target?
Vinny.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, the tactics of this, from what you just said, Tom, think about, so they killed Nasrallah in Beirut. They managed to plant the mini bombs in the pages and walkie-talkies of hundreds of Hezbollah members. They managed to kill Haniyeh while he was in Iran. They killed Hassan Soleimani in Iraq. And I just, with all this intelligence and all this tactical stuff, it brings me back to the October 7th and how if you have all that intelligence, how did you not see that coming? You know what I mean? It kind of begs that question where you're like, by the way, this isn't a rinky-dink mission what they're doing. They're going everywhere, and they're knocking out people with precision, with the pagers and everything. So it's just, I don't know.
Adam.
So, look, one thing's just becoming clearer and clearer and clearer in the Israel situation, because sometimes you have to take a sort of pan out from what happened October 7th and what they've been doing in Gaza. It's becoming clearer and clearer to me that Israel is basically doing one thing and one thing only: fighting Iran's web of terror that is basically set up all across the Middle East. Whether it's the Houthis that is going on, you see what's going on in the seas out there, whether it's Hezbollah in Lebanon, whether it's Hamas, whether it's militias all across Syria, Iraq, all over Afghanistan. I mean, Iran has their, people say the head of the snake. They like to use the term an octopus because it has tentacles everywhere. And Israel, here's what I know about them. If they go too hard in Gaza, you guys went too hard. Oh my God, if they go too surgical in Lebanon, well, that's not fair. You're very specific strikes. You just took them. They're going to be criticized regardless. So if you look at Bibi, and you know what Bibi's approval rating is in Israel right now, you know what it is? It's hovering in the mid to low 30s. It's not like they're a big fan of what's going on with him, because they want basically their people back who are basically being held ransom, is that he's saying, listen, I'm going to get criticized no matter what I do. So let me just eliminate the terror groups that are basically an existential threat to our country, and we'll apologize later, or maybe never, because these people have a clear motive of destroying Israel. And if you just look at who is aligned with Iran, where's Iran getting their funding? China, Russia, they're doing weapon supplies over there. The U.S. has just moved more military assets to the Mediterranean and to the Red Sea. Hopefully this does not escalate even further, but I'll circle back to one final point. Where the hell is Joe Biden during all this? You know, they said in the Bible, no man can serve two masters. Joe Biden should have come out and said, we stand with our ally. We are eliminating these threats. Enough with this.
Vivek,
Just
I got
like
a
Trump
question
did.
for you. I got a question for you. You're typically, Rob, I found the speech. I just send it to you if you want to find it. I text it to you. Vivek, there's a element of division on the conservative side with the way things are being handled with Israel. How are you processing that? You know what I'm saying, right? With some people are like, well, look at these guys. How many bodies, how many children and women is enough? And these are influencers that are going to vote for Trump, right? What do you say to them when there's a split on their opinions in this issue?
Well, look, I think especially when it comes to foreign policy, I think it shows with the modern Republican Party is definitely a big tent coalition, for sure. And I think that's one of the things, even I talked about protectionism versus libertarianism. I would say the same thing with respect to foreign intervention versus conservatism on staying focused on domestic affairs. Donald Trump does a good job of bridging that divide. I'll say this is that, I'll tell you where I land. My view is that it is the job of every country to look after its own best national interest. And I think it would be hypocritical to say, on one hand, that we believe that America first should pursue America first policies, but that somehow Israel cannot pursue Israel first policies. Right? I think that Israel has, as a sovereign nation, the right and responsibility to defend itself to the fullest, just like we would if we had an attack on our own homeland of the same kind. So I think that you could argue the hypocrisy is in a lot of different directions, but I think it would be hypocritical for us to say that we don't want the U.S. to intervene in foreign conflicts that don't directly affect the U.S., but we're going to be some sort of global arbiter of saying that here's what Israel can or cannot do. I think Israel should have the latitude to determine for itself what is the right way to defend itself. Now, there's a lot of debate in Israel about this. Keep in mind, you pointed out Bibi's approval rating.
Yeah.
There is a healthy level of debate. You've had members of his cabinet, including his war cabinet, resign over disagreements, right? Gantz was the most prominent, certainly. And so I think that is a debate that Israel gets to have for itself without the U.S. or any other country in the West tying its hands or tilting its scales. And I think that that's when a nation makes the best decisions for itself, where, back to your point, no man can serve two masters. Well, I think that applies to the leader of a nation. The master is the citizens of your nation, not some sort of international council determining what you can or cannot do. And so that's where I land on it, Patrick, is you could say that, okay, I don't want the U.S. troops to be used in this conflict. I think that is a principled position to say that we'll diplomatically support Israel. We don't think our troops should be involved here. But you can't at the same time say that, okay, we don't want our troops involved here, but then we're also going to pass moral judgment about what they're doing is or isn't the right way from a U.S. perspective. Because the principal perspective from an America First standpoint is Israel has the right to defend itself just like the United States would and will, God forbid, something like that happening here on our own homeland.
So here's a follow-up. Here's a follow-up to that, which you'll hear on the even in Twitter, people asking it. They'll say, hey, how many people died because of Helena? What's the number? Rob, what's the most recent number that we have? Almost 600? Is it?
It's up there.
Is it up there? I saw 600. I saw 2,000. I saw 1,000. It's a big number. It's a travesty what happened that went up there with the hurricane that took place. No, it's a lot more than that.
I think
That's
it's
just in Carolina,
yeah.
right? And people are posting stuff and they're saying, hey, if you're in Carolina, if you're in Florida, if you're in Atlanta, if you need help, unfortunately, you're not Ukraine, you're not Israel, you're not going to get the money. Because Ukraine and Israel will get the money before we do. What do you say to folks who, their challenge is sometimes the money is sent to people overseas more than Americans who need it today?
Well, look, I think the first and sole moral duty of a nation's leaders is to its own citizens. So I think that's, if I may, deeply consistent with what I just said before, which is it's not our job to be the person passing judgment that Israel's doing too much or too little. I think Israel gets to make that decision for itself. On the flip side, our own nation, you think about even the amount of money we've sent to Ukraine, for example. I mean, there you're talking about like mass numbers, like $200 billion in the last couple of years. I think that is unconscionable for Americans who are struggling right here at home. There are some questions that have been raised, and I'm not going to speculate on this until we get exact answers, but even in terms of divisions of the U.S. military or whatnot that have historically been used, or divisions of U.S. resources that have been used to rescue people here in the United States. We talked about the 82nd Airborne. There's other examples. Why aren't they able to actually come to the rescue here in North Carolina? We got two issues. One is an American government that is failing to serve its own Americans here at home. And part of that reason is, are we overstretched too thin, engaging in parts of the world? I think Ukraine is the foremost example of this, where we otherwise shouldn't be. Yes, I think that that's a reality. So I think that those are legitimate concerns. But I come back, like I did before, to first principles. The first and sole moral duty of U.S. elected leaders is to U.S. citizens. Again, the chapter in the book is called Nationalism Isn't a Bad Word. Well, I think that that's a principle that shouldn't be controversial. And the fact that that is controversial today, Patrick, tells you, I think, a lot of what's wrong in our country.
Yeah. Vinny, what are you
going to say? I was going to say, because you were talking about, Pat, about the deploying troops. We're sending a couple more thousand recently. This came out yesterday on AP. And this additional forces would raise the total number of troops in the region as many as 43,000. I mean, Israel doesn't seem like it's slowing down. This thing is escalating. It's going to get uglier and uglier. I mean, they're doing these attacks, and I guess I sent this to Rob, Pat. The PM of Jordan expressed the Arab world is ready for peace, but they're saying that Israel's refusing it. He's saying, like, listen, we're asking for it, we want it, but they're not even coming to the table for it. But my thing is this, Vivek, and being a military member just like Pat, when you're deploying all these people, it's not just as a deterrent. This is getting to escalate to the point where it's only a matter of time, because I just read it right here as well, Vivek, that we have, F-15s, F-16, the jets and everything like that. I mean, with people in these jets. So if, God forbid, something happens.
You can also just look at these stats. I mean, it's striking to me. There's over 100,000 U.S. troops in Western Europe right now.
Yeah.
I mean, why the heck are they over there?
Yeah.
I'm actually having a debate with John Bolton later this week. I forget which day, at the Virginia Military Institute. We're exactly talking about these questions. They invited me.
Bolton.
They said, you want to debate? Would you be open to having a debate with Bolton? I said, absolutely. Because my own view is, again, the job of a nation's leaders foremost is to protect its own homeland and its own citizens. And we're clearly failing to do that. But I also believe in open dialogue. So let's get the best views for the other side on the table and have at it. But there's 100,000 troops in Western Europe. You want to go back when Dwight D. Eisenhower was talking about whether there was going to be U.S. troops 10 years later. This is like in 1951. He said, if there's U.S. troops still in Europe 10 years later, that is an example, that is the best evidence we'll have that NATO has failed in its mission. Well, guess what? Now we're in the year 2024, and we've got 100,000 U.S. troops in Western Europe. So I do think that this is a philosophical divide in the country. It's not right versus left. It exists within both the right and within the left of what is the job of the U.S. military to engage in conflicts in other parts of the world. And I come back to one principle. It is whether or not it advances clearly identifiable American interests or not. Is that an isolationist position? No, it's not, because I think there are clear examples of where it is in the U.S. interest for making sure that Americans aren't adversely impacted by, for example, loss of access to the semiconductor supply chain coming out of Taiwan. You could go straight down the list.
Correct.
But that should be the guiding principle, not to be some sort of global policeman, which I think that I'll call it out, whether it comes from the right, the left, from the nationalist right, from the liberalist right. That's the first principle across the board, is what advances U.S. interests.
The question becomes if that's ever going to happen. And here's why I say that. Because is it possible to win elections with what Eisenhower talked about, the military-industrial complex, knowing both sides need the money from the big guys that are lobbying God knows how much money, that they make money the more wars there is? Like even with COVID, the business model of a hospital is to make sure every bed is taken. The business model of a hotel is to make sure every bed is taken. The business model of a company that sells weapons is to have more wars. You need customers. You need people that are having issues for you to be able to sell more stuff. If you don't, there's a problem there, right? So is it even possible that could be addressed? And if yes, how?
Yeah, so it's telling that even Eisenhower, he saved that for his farewell speech. Right? At that point, the farewell speeches are interesting.
He wanted to live
because then
longer.
you got nothing to lose, right?
Yeah.
You've got nothing to lose. And so, look, I think it's a major problem in this country. Is it possible? Yes, because I believe in America. Right, we're a country that fought a revolution, defeated the greatest empire in the world in 1776. But it's going to take that type of energy from we the people to say we're the ones who self-govern.
But go with it.
Do I think it's possible? Yes.
No, it's not. It's the key question is how.
Yeah.
So the question is how do we do it? Because this is the one part where so there is you're running for office, okay? So hey, I got to find a way to get my poor people that are going to vote for me, and we have to find an enemy. Who's going to be our enemy? Rich billionaires. Mm-hmm. We're going to tax them on unrealized capital gains. The average person is like, wow. So what is unrealized capital that was gained? What is unreal? But that's great. That's more money for us, right? Let's do that. So there's stuff that you're going to say during a campaign that you're like, there's no way we're going to be able to do anything about that anyways. But I got to say, because my party wants me to say it. Then there's the stuff that you can actually, truly change. Do you really think this can change? And if yes, how do you do it? Which president is willing to put their life on the line to say, we have to figure this out, where we can't have these military industrial complex continue with all the money you guys are making?
Look, I think it's going to take somebody who's independently wealthy, somebody who did not grow up within that system, right? If you're a product of the system, then you're there to protect the system, right? The system didn't advance you. Somebody who grew up outside of the system, who has the willingness to take actual risk, and who has access to independent wealth to say that you're not dependent on that same system to be constrained in what you say. And somebody who's in it not necessarily to just win as the goal for itself, because winning an election isn't the ultimate goal. Winning is winning for the country. You could win on paper, but you've lost for the country. Yeah, so I mean, it's one of the things that certainly compelled me to run for president as an outsider. It's one of the reasons I'm supporting Donald Trump, is I think that he's somebody that is independently wealthy, doesn't have to be doing what he's doing. I think we need more people like that in American politics that aren't a product of that system. Are there obstacles? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's many ways to sort of take the air out of the other side. One is just through capture. So I think one of the things you got to be alert to is making sure that you're not being captured at every step of the way. What does it look like? I think it starts with the ability to spend independently, the ability to be financially independent, and it starts with somebody who is obviously willing to lose. And if you have somebody who's not taking real risk in the things they say, that means they're going to be captured. But if you have somebody who's willing to stick to their convictions even when it's inconvenient, that's, I think, the best shot you're going to have, especially if they're financially independent.
This is going to be a tough enemy to go up against. You got big pharma, you got military industrial complex, you got some of these guys that are going to be tough ones, where one could sit there and say, well, this may be, to do it, you have to risk more than just your job and re-election. Because I understand not wanting to be re-elected. And it's funny what you say is how he saved the speech.
The last one.
It's kind of like you work for UPS for 40 years, and on the last they say, listen, not going to lie, the benefits sucked, my back hurts, okay, I don't appreciate this, but I'm out of here. You guys do whatever you want to do with it now. Some of you guys asked us about the only wallet that I wear. This is the wallet that I wear. This is the Valuetainment wallet that I wear. ID, cards, cash, easy to use. It's not heavy. It's not thick. It's not, and it's 100% leather. It is the only wallet you will see in my pocket. It's not a Fendi. It's not a Ferragamo. It's not a Louis Vuitton. It's none of that stuff. It's a Valuetainment wallet with the logo on the side. They're back, and here's what we're doing today, which I'm excited about. If you order one of the wallets, which Rob, let's put the link for the wallet. If you order one of the wallets that we have them in brown, we have them in black. We're going to give you the card holder and the keychain of Valuetainment sent your way. Price $99. The link will be below for you guys to get. And you can add other Future Looks Bright gear anyways, because the event we're hosting here soon that we'll announce, to attend it, you will have to wear Future Looks Bright gear.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.